Hail, Lairsons! I am Dungeon Master Wyvern, and this is a very special episode of my Ultima Online podcast. Alongside my good co-hosts, Crispy, Poison Ivy, and Zeke, I had the incredible opportunity to sit down with the dedicated developers at Broadsword Online Games to discuss the New Legacy Seasonal Shard for Ultima Online. Gathering at the Wyvern's Lair Guild Tower in-game, producer Greg Havlusch, aka Kyronix, and content designer Nick, aka Parallax, joined us at the TWL rooftop bar, and over the course of an hour, they generously shared insights into the journey of New Legacy so far, offering a behind-the-scenes look at its development. I invite you to join us as Kyronix and Parallax reveal their experiences creating the first season of New Legacy, unveil exciting plans for the current season, and answer key questions from the player community. And of course, we'll catch a glimpse of the epic adventure taking shape for Season 2. Now, step with me into the depths of the Mega Dungeon for the latest episode of the Wyvern's Lair Ultima Online podcast. So I would like to welcome everyone today to a very special recording here at the Wyvern's Lair YouTube channel. I have the great pleasure of speaking to the developers of Broadsword Online Games, Kyronix and Parallax. Kyronix is now the lead producer for Ultima Online, and Parallax is working alongside Kyronix here as a content designer. And together, they and the rest of the Ultima Online team have been shepherding a very new way of experiencing this classic MMORPG. They launched the New Legacy Shard at the tail end of 2024, and I've had the pleasure of playing on it for several months and discovering this experience alongside my co-hosts here for this conversation. So I think what I'd like to do here is let's first welcome the developers who have so graciously joined us here on the New Legacy Shard at the Wyvern's Lair Guild Tower at Zeke's rooftop bar. So why don't we start off with Parallax here? Parallax, I'm more rum. Parallax, would you mind introducing yourself and letting us know a little bit about how you're contributing to the success of Ultima Online in your role as a content designer?
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me. My name is Parallax, obviously. I'm a content creator for Ultima Online. I've been in this position for a little over 3 years now. And basically, I work on designs for events, narratives, and New Legacy drops. You name it, I've had my hand in it in New Legacy. And I'm also currently working on production with those events that are going on there. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Parallax. A lot of what you've done has been very exciting for players like myself and hundreds of others, thousands of others to experience. And with that, we're going to turn over the microphone to Kyronix here.
Hello. Thank you all for having us. This is very exciting for us to be able to spend some time with you all. And like I was saying before, geek out on all things Ultima Online. I think Parallax, or Nick as I call him from day to day, because it's less syllables, is being very modest in that he has been an immense contributor to all things UO since he's joined the team. So we're really lucky to have passionate people. For those of you who don't know, my name is Greg Havlusch, also known as Kyronix. Recently took over as producer for Ultima Online, but before that spent far too many years than I like to see written down on print, working as a designer on UO, and then prior to that as an event moderator. So I've been part of the project for a long time, and then before that was a player. When I think for the most part, all of the devs that are working on UO started playing it at some point or another before they ultimately got to work on this amazing project. So we're really thankful to have such an amazing community behind us, and those of you who are willing to put on events like this where we have a chance to talk is really something special. So we're super happy to be here, and really excited about what we've done with New Legacy and what more is to come. And then also for our production shards as well, since we we have a lot to keep mind of in the Ultimaverse here.
We're very excited to have you, Greg. And as you noted, people who joined the Broadsword Ultima Online team over the decades, uh, you know, generally have made long contributions to sustaining this foundational MMORPG. You have 17 years in, and
Don't say that part out loud. That makes me feel way too old, because in my mind, I'm still like, 15 or 16 years old playing UO after I get home from school. So when you say that part out loud, I'm like, oh gosh, where's the time gone? But
Hey,
it's all good.
you're just getting started, my friend. Just getting started. I do want to, acknowledge a passing of the torch here. Now that we have the opportunity, and hopefully, many people from the UO community will eventually find their way to this podcast. I do want to thank Bonnie Armstrong Masana for her years of service in her role as producer for Ultima Online. She served in that role from 2012 until just the top of 2025, when she passed on the torch to you, and indeed helped hire you and many other good developers, Greg, over her tenure as producer, and now continues to support the team in her role as sort of our community events lead. So thank you, Sana, for helping get us all as a community and as a game to this point in time. With that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and quickly introduce myself. I am Dungeon Master Wyvern. I am a YouTube gaming content creator. I had a long-standing interest in Ultima Online. I was, that profile, Greg, of that young teenager who was reading Ultima Online as a kid, and I just kind of missed that boat. I was, kind of all over the map growing up, but now that I've found an opportunity for my own midlife crisis, I've come back, and I have no regrets about spending time discovering a very rich game and a very rich community. So that's my profile. And with that, I'm going to pass over the microphone to Crispy here.
Cheers, Wyvern. Hi, everyone. I'm Crispy. I play on New Legacy and Atlantic, where I'm in Cool Guild. So, yeah, been having a great time over on New Legacy, and really excited about this discussion.
Thank you, Crispy. Over to Poison Ivy.
Hi, I'm Poison Ivy. I've been a day one player, and I've been super stoked about New Legacy for a while now. When I heard it, I definitely came running back, and I cannot wait to see where it goes.
Thank you very much, Poison Ivy. And last but far from least, Zeke.
Zeke is always less because I start with a Z. But yep, I'm Zeke. I play originally from Legends, and now I don't play exclusively on NL, but I've limited my time on Legends to basically 2 days a week when we have our guild meetings and events that are done by EM Kalima. And I've been playing since 2004.
Thank you very much, Zeke. And together, I feel very fortunate to be heading into this conversation with my fellow co-hosts. Thank you all for making the time for this. I'm excited to speak to developers with your perspectives and experience to add to the conversation. Now, because we're actually in game, and because this rarely happens, at least I've never seen something like this, I have to take a look at Parallax and Kyronix's characters here. So first, we're gonna take a look at Kyronix first, because Parallax really has all the bling. But let me see if I can get a handle on. There we go. Open paper doll. So this is Kyronix, folks. I know the folks on Discord probably can't see this, but I'm going to go ahead and describe it for you. It's got a really jaunty top hat, a nice little red beard, a little necklace, a very flashy tuxedo, thigh-high boots, and if I click on the scroll here, we actually don't get anything. I was just curious what would be there. Jack the Ripper looking, Ivy.
Definitely not that nefarious.
Or like, gosh, Frank Sinatra. That's the vibe that I get.
There you go.
All right. Now we're looking at Parallax here. Okay, Nick. Parallax has a dragon breastplate. He's got a ruckus rum, which I've never heard of or seen before in game. Plate mail legs, boots. He's got an etched ring, which is +4 hit point increase, +5 stamina increase, +4 mana increase, and an octopus necklace. Now, have you guys like heard of these things before, Ivy, Zeke, or Crispy, or is that kind of like unique items that only the developers get to put on their characters?
No, the octopus comes from the treasure chests. The Ruckus Rum, I don't remember if it was from an event that we had a few years back, one of the dungeon crawls or one of the invasion type things.
Oh, there you go. There's a good memory for you. All right, I think we're about ready to head into the interview formally. I do want to thank everyone who's shown up on Discord to join us for this conversation. For those of you who are here, you can follow along on the Zoom conversation through the stream that I'm sharing. I do want to welcome some familiar names here like Garrett, my great friend Lemon, Pockted, Slurs McKenzie, and Violet from Ka. Thank you all for being here. If you have questions, please feel free to put down your questions in the Morin's Basement text chat. And I would ask that you keep it topical. So try to make sure that if you're asking a question, it kind of falls along what we're currently discussing. If you go too far off the map, that's where you will remain. So with that, with that guidance, off we go. I think Crispy, you're going to kick us off.
Cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how the new legacy concept came about. And was there something specific that made you take the direction of New Legacy, and what were your goals when you were doing that?
Sure, that's a really good question. So a lot of times with anything that we do in game, it usually starts with one of us just having an idea, right? At our core, we're all gamers and we play lots of different games, whether they be video games or tabletop games or card games. And Stephen Brown, our engineer, actually, Bleak, as you guys may know him as, said something one day way back when, what benefit it would do for us to do some type of limited / reset type shard. And at the same time, we were talking about what it would be like to soften the new player onboarding experience, right? So, at this point, the game was probably 20 plus years old. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we got for new players was it was really tough to kind of break into that world. All right, well, how can we kind of check all those boxes? On top of that, we had this laundry list of requests from our players like, oh, couldn't we do this or couldn't we do that? Or wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And for a lot of them, yeah, we agree. It would be awesome. But the other kind of problem with having a game world that's so old is that we are limited to what we can do because it's got to balance with the broader like production game world. So from that, we came up with this idea, what if we did this new shard and basically changed some of the rules and tinkered with this and simplified that. And it kind of organically just turned into what originally was the initial concept for New Legacy. And it was like, great, we can do all these new quests and we don't have to worry about balancing against all of the existing equipment and stats and skills and things like that. And then it was like, all right, cool. And we can do all these great narrative lines and make this feel like a real RPG. And then it was like, okay, now go do it. And I was like alone in the corner crying, shaking because it was so much to do. And then we hired Nick and then he got to do it. But, and then he came on board and we kind of fleshed out the idea, started implementing some of the core systems, and voila, next thing you know, we had New Legacy.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely I agree that it's I think for like a new player experience, it's really good. And I kind of try and encourage people that join our guild, they might be on Atlantic to kind of give it a go. But it's still a lot of fun for vets as well. But I think it definitely is it's a really good like new player experience to get. I was talking to Wyvern about this the other day. I think it's a really good way to learn a lot of the basics, right, before being overwhelmed with like a massive amount of content on production, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if I look back to when I first started playing, it was, 1999. I was probably, in middle school or something like that. And I had nothing to compare to at the time, right? Like I came from playing old school RPGs like Might and Magic, Diablo, um, and things like an auto map were nice things to have. But even before that, I used to watch my friend's dad play some of the old school uh Commodore games that literally was like, oh, if you want a map, you better start drawing things on paper. So, this idea of having these like little creature comforts to make the onboarding experience a little less in your face was completely foreign to me at the time, and I didn't mind that because I was young and excited, and you know, my life revolved around Ultima Online. But here we are, 20 plus years later, and people's habits have changed. The way people consume games has changed. Our core age group has you know, kids that are playing UO nowadays, and the expectations have changed. So we wanted to address a lot of that with New Legacy, and I think we did a pretty good job of uh, allowing people a softer on ramp, if you will, into Britannia, and hopefully get them hooked into this amazing community and this great experience.
That's a great segue to our next question that Zeke is going to own for us.
Okay. And so where did the idea for the narrative path come from? And what did you want to achieve with this new approach to character progression? And are there plans for the new narrative quest in the future of this season or future seasons in Nella?
Yeah, I can take this one. So the narrative path kind of was created as a way to tailor the experience to new players, introduce them to the game mechanics through engaging quests and storylines, while also telling those storylines to players. And while players are experiencing the narrative stories, they're also leveling up their character in the background. If you go through Oklo, you come out of it with 50 skill to start. Then you can choose warrior, mage, ranger from there, etc. The goal ultimately with the narrative path was to just create this experience for players to be able to, progress while having fun at the same time, and not the old school way of, putting a quarter in your keyboard and macroing on something for days on end to level your skills. So that's kind of where the narrative progression came from. As far as new narratives, we definitely want to do new narratives for next season. They can be fairly time consuming to put together, but we definitely would like to do more for next season for sure.
So I can share with you all as a new player, everyone obviously, experiences a game differently, but for myself, the narratives really helped hold my interest and sort of drive me forward as I was progressing through the warrior narrative path. And I totally understand what you're, you know, saying here, Parallax, about how much work goes into building out these experiences. But I definitely I had a much more involved entry point to Ultima Online and learning how to play this MMORPG than I did just logging into the production shards. So I think that if that was sort of like one of your intended goals with the narrative path, it was very well met.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the narrative path took basically in production the New Haven experience and just made it wide open so that you didn't just get to level 50 or 50 skill points. You actually were able to progress your character all the way to the end of that path, which I've done probably all four at least twice
Very cool.
between the beta and live.
The next question is mine for you folks, Kyronix and Parallax. So we're here now. The new Legacy Shard launched in October. It's been out for several months at this point. The community has had a chance to really sort of dig their teeth into it and experience the seasonal shard for themselves. And you've had a chance to monitor player behavior, player patterns, interaction with the new Legacy Shard. And I'm curious to find out at this point, at the midpoint, what so far has really worked in your opinion, and what are some elements, some features that you might want to revisit and improve upon for a future season?
Yeah, that's a really good question. a lot of times people assume like, oh, the devs don't listen, they don't play. I can assure you that we collectively, the team, are thoroughly obsessed with all things UO. Probably more so than our collective spouses and partners, etc., would like. But we spend an inordinate amount of time, just consuming as much of the player feedback and as much of the user experience as we can, because ultimately we want UO to be great for everybody. So when we looked at, how things are progressing with New Legacy, I think one of the first things that stood out to us was kind of our scheduling with production. So we constantly, and as you guys know, we're a relatively small but scrappy team. I was going to say young, but I don't know if I can claim that anymore. I'll still claim it though. We're still a young team at heart. But one of the things that we noticed was that we wanted to deliver some content over to production because we did spend a tremendous amount of development time on New Legacy to get it over the finish line. But we also didn't want to neglect production. So we put together a number of incredible events. Nick did a tremendous job with some of the most recent ones with our Echoes of the Blighted Realm live events. But what we saw is that when we have the two competing against each other with like a production publish versus a New Legacy publish, there's people who want to experience both. So one of the things that we're doing kind of moving forward for this year and into the future is staggering our release schedule so that we're not competing with ourselves, and giving people an ample opportunity to have fun on both shards, because we want you guys to have lots of fun things to do on production if that's your thing, but we also want to have lots of fun things to do for New Legacy and really see where we can take it into the future. So that's one of the big takeaways that we've seen from the first season. From some of the things that have really stood out to us that have really worked, and I'll let Nick chime in too with what his opinion on this is. But for me, seeing people with that sense of wonder that you used to have in the early days has really been exciting. I really like to see how people have embraced the legacy system. That was kind of one of the core features of how we were going to keep this persistent across seasons, and how you were going to build that legacy for your character and basically tell your story. So I've really enjoyed seeing that, and that I think has worked really well for us. And I definitely see us doing more to support that into the future.
Nick?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Greg said there. As far as what has worked, I would say from my design point of view, what I felt has really worked is the world bosses, the narrative paths, the new changes we made to the taming system, what we put in Publish 1 with the legendary foe point system as kind of a catch-up mechanic, so, and a guarantee drop mechanic as well, so you can get those gold ingots if you want to tame Emberwing, or if you're not getting luck on the drop for it. I felt those systems have been received well, and they're working as intended, and have overall been a good thing for New Legacy. And the Manticore encounter especially, that's like my pride and joy encounter. When that went in on beta, I basically sat at the Manticore, invisible, but watching players do it, and it was a great experience to watch them learn that fight and see them overcome the encounter and progress on it. It was a great to see that come to life. So that's I would say events and world bosses are really hitting the mark.
Manticore is great. I think it's like one of the most fun boss fights that I've done in UA. First time I did it, I was like, this is brilliant. Like,
I wonder if you watched our first one, Ivy.
I know, I was just thinking that, but I do want to say I definitely give you guys props for giving us the juvenile manicores as pets. They are so adorable. Love them.
That's all Nick. He's our resident pet expert.
Their little paws are so poofy. I can't get over it.
So speaking of pet experts, I do want to welcome two visitors to the Guild Tower as we talk to developers here. We're joined by Violet, who obviously is the guild leader of Ka, one of the cornerstones of the UO community, and Ka specializes in actually sharing information about the taming system in UO. So speaking of juvenile manticores and pets, good to have you here, Violet. And we're also joined by Pocted, our good friend from Never Lucky. Thank you for being here, Pocted. That's a great segue. Speaking of, the great work that was done by you, Nick, and the other developers that fed into the content experience for New Legacy. Ivy has the next question about PVM.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on my question, which is, what are your plans for improving or adding to PBM content for this season and, of course, next season? So I guess my question would kind of turn into, can you give us any hints to, are we going to see anything the rest of this season as far as any of that goes? Or some sort of teaser for next season for us? And what about treasure maps? Where's that at in you guys' hierarchy of what's important to tackle?
Yes, 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 and yes. I'll let Nick tease as much as he wants to about what he's been working on recently, but we do have a publish coming to New Legacy.
Yes.
It is going to be our New Legacy Publish 2. That's going to include some content updates as well as some additional changes specifically focused on New Legacy. So that is definitely on our roadmap. People have said in the past, like, oh, we want to know everything and anything that's coming down the pike, and I definitely hear you, and we want to provide you guys with as much to get amped about as you can, but we also have to remain very agile, as it were, for the different stuff, I will call it, that we have to work on. There's a lot that goes into this behind the scenes, so we appreciate everybody's patience as we try to deliver all this stuff, but I want to make sure that you guys have fair enough warning to get excited about the new stuff that's coming. So, we'll try to do some quarterly updates for y'all as we move through. We had our winter update earlier this year, and we'll be pushing out our spring update here shortly. But again, there's a lot of moving parts to it. So while we want to tell you as much as we can, a lot of times we can't tell you everything. But what we can tell you now is that New Legacy Publish 2 will be coming in due time here.
Really exciting. Thank you, Chronix.
Yeah, and with that, I'll let Nick go down the rabbit hole as far as he wants to with the most recent thing he's worked on, because it's really cool.
All the way down to Allison in Wonderland, Nick. Don't stop.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave some stuff to be surprising for when we release the patch notes, but I can say there is a new system that's being implemented that is repeatable and has a lot of collectible factors and even some competitive nature for it. Not PvP, but, can you collect more than your friends or other guilds, for example? And with that comes rewards appropriate to that system. You ask about new world bosses, new dungeon kill quests. I'll just say most likely that is coming. I'll leave a little hints there for that. Treasure maps, part of this update is going to include treasure maps. You'll find some new stuff inside the treasure maps you dig up that may or may not pair with this new collection system. But yeah, there is quite a bit coming. Some rumors even maybe of a new pet. I don't know. Didn't hear that from me. But lots of fun stuff on the way.
That's incredible. I do have a quick question before we move on to Crispy here. You touched on this, Nick, but the Manticore encounter, again, I'm a new player here, and so it's interesting for me to hear from veterans like Crispy and Zeke and Ivy here about their experiences with some of these legendary foe encounters. But the Manticores and Valara the Thought Shaper are incredibly fun encounters for myself as a new player to the game. I'm wondering what went in. Could you briefly talk about your kind of the design process for these encounters as you set them up as a content designer? I'm sure people would be curious to hear a little bit of the the behind the scenes work that goes into designing some of the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you may or may not be aware with Valara, the first iteration of that was basically just a reskinned version of Korra the Sorceress from production. And it turned out that we underestimated just how skillful New Legacy players were. And she put up very little challenge. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and think, what could we do to spice up this encounter? And for those of you that have done the Ranger narrative line, the final boss fight in that against the Red Sorceress, Crimson Sorceress, is she summons portals and ads come out of that. So I had the idea of porting that over to the Villar encounter and creating a souped up version of that. And ultimately, that's where that encounter came from. And then if you happen to play production during the Manifestation of Evil event, Shadows Awakening, that we brought that same portal system over to production as well, which was met with pretty good results. It definitely spiced up that encounter. If you didn't do the mechanics, I will say that. And as far as like the Manticores, that one was kind of a labor of love over a long time. I come from many different MMOs. Like I've played lots of different MMOs. So I like personally like involved encounters, strategies, phases, all kinds of stuff like that. And I thought, how can I implement this in Ultima Online? And that's ultimately where the Manticore encounter came from. The double boss, the different phases, the enrage mechanic, all that was kind of just starting from basic, like, okay, we're fighting the Manticores, and what can I do to change it up? How about we fight one at a time? Now, how about they switch places when they get different percentages? And how about we throw in a bone here, and all of a sudden there start spawning tornadoes, and these tornadoes chain lightning, and you have to watch your damage, otherwise you're going to kill yourself, which was very fun to watch the first couple of groups try the Manticore just destroy themselves with the chain lightning, by the way, just putting it out there. So but yeah, these encounters, they kind of definitely evolve over time. Like, they'll start out very basic, and then as we're play testing or as I'm running through it, add more mechanics to try to make it more complex. And ultimately, my goal is to give the players a good experience, a fun experience, and a unique experience with where I can. They can be quite intensive to do. I wouldn't even say how long the Manticore encounter took to implement, but it was worth it. And I would definitely love to do more encounters like that in the future.
And I think Nick brings up a couple, two really good points that I'd love to touch on. Number one is that if you notice, he talked about like how we ported things between production and New Legacy. And I think that was one of the questions we were going to get into. But anytime that we can take work that we've done on either shard and use that to leverage into something we want to do on either shard, we're certainly going to take advantage of it. One of the things that UO has going for it is that it's got an immensely robust code base over the years. So it's pretty unlikely that nobody ever has done what you're trying to do. So there's usually at least some level of jumping off point, although a lot of times it's just easier and quicker to rewrite the whole thing. Which leads me to the other point is that being a developer for UO, particularly from a content implementation perspective, is unique in that, it's one thing for Nick to come up with all these crazy good ideas and exciting mechanics and things like that, but then he has to actually implement that all by his lonesome, off in the corner, and deliver that to our engineer, who then makes a lot of grumbly noises when we invariably break stuff. But it's definitely an intensive process, and like I said before, especially with that Manticore encounter, he did a tremendous job.
Well, this is exciting for me to hear because I just feel like you guys are getting started. And as you roll up your sleeves and discover your stride as far as what you can, push in the way of new experiences for New Legacy, I think we're in for, months and months of fun in this current season, and certainly years and years of fun in the future seasons ahead. Over to Crispy.
Yeah, so one of the New Legacy objectives was to encourage player exploration of the game world. And I kind of spent, and people in the guild have spent quite a lot of time just walking around in the wilderness trying to find little Easter eggs or little bits and pieces. I was wondering if you plan to kind of, or you considered any sort of game exploration incentivization for maybe even for season 2 or.
Yeah, that was one of the pillars of kind of the original design intent for New Legacy is how can we rekindle that exploration, given that, at this point, I think the Ultima map is been explored to the nth degree down to the single tile. So we did make some map changes in season 1, as you probably have discovered. Part of that was from a technical perspective. You've noticed the canal / mountainy thing that kind of cuts the continent in half is also the climate boundary, because can't snow in the southern jungles of Trinsic. Well, I guess it could, right? With magic, anything is possible. But to keep in the theme of that region of the world, we wanted to have there be a clear delineation between wintertime snow and wintertime summer palm trees. So when it comes to world building changes, they're very intensive. If any of you have played the Time of Legends expansion and explored Eodon, I painstakingly Eodon click by click, hour by hour, over, probably took me like 3 months to try and create it as a semi true to recreation of the original Eodon map. But it's definitely a time consuming process. Now, in the future, we may have some tools available to us to make that a little easier, but that's something we would have to investigate. We'd probably want to leverage for the game as a whole instead of specifically New Legacy. But we love Easter eggs and exploration, and anytime we can fit those things in, we certainly want to provide those.
Just the follow-up is here, right? I just very curious to ask Greg and Nick. We're several months into the first season. Are there things out there that players have yet to discover?
Well, I haven't been following all communication and all channels, obviously, but I will say there are several Easter eggs I have put in the game that I have not seen anyone talk about. So you can get out there, you can look for them. As far as they relate to content, like is there hidden encounters and stuff like that? No, all that's been discovered right now. But there are definitely some Easter eggs out there that are to be discovered. Let's see if you guys can find them.
Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna get the hunt going again.
I see a snipe hunt coming up here. I'm sorry.
All right. Speaking of our great pirate captain Zeke here, I think you have another question here, very important one as we head into
Yeah,
the year.
yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of the characters on the shattering as far as the character transfers are concerned. Can you share any additional information about what we will be able to take with us when we transfer our characters from NL to the production shards? Pets, equipment, deco, titles of things of that nature.
Yeah, so if you look at the original New Legacy FAQ that we have on UO.com, we kind of went over this in broad strokes, and a lot of that still remains the case. There's with any kind of persistently evolving gameplay world, we have to be really careful about what we allow to transfer back to production, making sure it's not going to break anything, because we can expect things go a certain way and we can test to make sure they go a certain way, and then we can verify that they have gone a certain way, and then you guys get your hands on it and it goes a completely different way that we never anticipated or expected. So we will be doing kind of a final audit before the shattering begins. But if in terms of broad strokes, you can kind of consult that list. Some of the things on there, like we want to allow that kind of core legacy to be something that you can show off on production. So what that ultimately ends up looking like and how that makes its way over to production still remains to be seen, just based on how things have kind of shaken out this season. Certain things, that you definitely wouldn't be able to take, probably equipment falls into that category. We did balance, and Nick can go into this a little bit more. We talked about how we balanced pets for being in the context of the broader production level pet scheme. So there is some flexibility there, but I don't want to who used to say it? Starlong used to say, "Don't lawyer me, bro." So it all remains to be determined, but there is some flexibility for us to let you take some goodies over to production when the season ends.
Okay, but like the Manticore and Emberwing, things of that nature should be fine, possibly.
In theory.
There we go. And I will say for those listening, and this is very important for us to sort of get across, we shouldn't hold the developers to anything they may share with us on this interview. I think that's one reason why developers in the industry are fairly reluctant to make contact with the community, or indeed, have a certain sort of approach to communication. So let's be very gracious with our guests here, and allow them that freedom to not tie them down to a given answer.
I don't know. I recorded this, so it's yeah, it's in concrete now, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know everybody wants like a concrete list of like a checklist, and we know we hear you, but you've got to give us just a little bit of flexibility, so we
Oh,
don't want to break production
no, I
when
understand.
the shattering comes.
Right. Hey, you don't want to shatter production.
No, we certainly do not.
A quick follow up though on that. When I say equipment, I'm like armor sets, for example, the progression during the path of a warrior or a ranger or a mage, where you get different sets of armor that they're basically very basic armor, but they have a new name, right? You have the initiative, you have a master set, etc., a grandmaster, things of those nature. Not necessarily the stats on them or anything like that, but like on production, I collect plate mail armor from every event we've ever had. From all the different dungeon runs, any ones that drop them where you turned in points, people collect the armor. I mean, you see them at everybody's houses. And I was just curious, don't care about the usability of it. It's just basically the unique names and things of that nature
Right.
that I know a lot of people collect.
Yeah, and that's, I think, you bring up a really good point with the collectability of it, right? Like, I think at this point on the production side of the game, one of the core gameplay experience has become collecting things, right? So we have to be really careful about what we let transfer from New Legacy over to production, because we don't want to inadvertently just like destroy the collectability of something. Because, let's say at one point we had a certain hued dragon breastplate, and now we let it transfer over onto New Legacy, and essentially we've crushed a collection. Like we certainly don't want to do that. So that's why I kind of said, like, in broad strokes, things like legacy items, pets, decorations, and
Yep.
any non-consumable from the Ultima store are probably fine to go. But when it comes to equipment and like quest items and things like that, where we don't have to worry about on New Legacy, like rarity and things like that, none of that would probably make it over.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a good part, Zeke. As for myself, these pure gold ingots that are the lure for the Emberwing belong to Elroy. He's very generously one of our guild members here at the Wyvern's Lair, and he's very generously allowed us to present it here on the presentation stone. But if I do get my hands on my own pure gold ingots, that's coming with me back to Atlantic and sits under my house. I actually have a follow up. Again, it ties into the shattering here, and there's been a lot of talk and interest in the transference of characters in the season to production. I feel like, in terms of where I kind of find my most enjoyment playing UO, I really feel that I'm going to be a seasonal purist and spending most of my time on New Legacy. So I'm curious as to whether you can share any information about how character rollovers to the next season will work, and whether there'll be unique legacy rewards, items, or achievements for doing so. And how will uh, players reborn in the subsequent season be able to continue to build on this legacy that you've talked about, that's so tied to the New Legacy experience?
So I think a big part of that is your house name, right? We always intended on that to persist from season to season. So it's almost like you're playing with either another generation of your family, or another facet of reality. Because one of the nice things about the broader Ultimate Universe is that we kind of play it fast and loose with space and time and alternate realities and things like that. So if in season 1 you're playing as a character with a specific house name, then in season 2 it could be, your 5th generation grandchild, or it could be the iteration of that legacy that happened in a world where magic is shunned and mages are treated like outcasts and cast down to the most undesirable places of the world. It could be a world where, animals are natively aggressive and everything is out there to kill you. And, there's things like permadeath, who knows, right? One of the nice things about New Legacy is that we have that kind of clean slate to do some interesting and experimental things with the, permadeath. That one's going to get me in trouble. With New Legacy. So, and kind of the continuity between those seasons is going to be your house surname. Now, as far as like what rolls over, like, are you going to be able to roll in with your character with full stats? Definitely not. We're pretty firm on the fact that it's going to be a hard reset from a progression standpoint, and the things that'll progress are more in line with what your character's legacy or story is at that point.
Okay, that's a great answer. An important one for us to hear. So for those of you who are listening, a rollover will likely be an entire reset of your character. I'd love to hear. Obviously, this is very early days, but I think that the New Legacy community would love to hear a little bit more about incentives for players to remain, to keep their characters, and roll them over to the next season in the way of what incentives might be out there for them to sort of support that choice. But thank you so much, Kyronix, for that answer. With that, we're moving on to Ivy.
All right, so I get the question about player crafting here. So can we expect any changes or improvements to the player crafting and the it's what we call it. Can't say it.
Wait, hold on, what do you call it?
Like Kongi.
The Kongi? I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Usually the guys are like, hey, what should we call this thing? And I'm the one that comes up with some like completely made up word, and I take full responsibility for the congiarum, because I was like, congiarium. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, we
But
should
The
have
Congo
Kongi.
drums.
But I love Kongi too.
Yeah. But are there going to be any improvements this season, or are we going to have to wait till next season and kind of fill it out a little bit more, like such as rewards and especially letting us know a little bit more where we're at when we have to build these, levels up to get the next level of armor and weaponry and what have you.
Sounds like a great question for Nick. He's the crafting expert. He's a lot of expert in things.
Yeah, so I have heard the feedback from players that they want crafters to be more impactful in New Legacy, and it's definitely on our radar for making improvements to what that looks like. As far as specifics, I can't really go into anything in detail, but one goal of mine is definitely to make crafters more impactful. Whether that makes it into this season or something purely for next season is still to be determined. But yeah, we want crafters to have a purpose other than as they say, a repair bot, essentially. So yeah, I definitely heard the feedback on that.
Great. Ivy, I think you're up next again.
Yeah. So I guess the player housing question here. Currently we have the 7x7, and it's a small stone. Perhaps maybe we get an option for maybe other 7x7s if space is an issue, and maybe allow us to maybe get a small marble workshop, for example, whether that be by some questing that we have to do or some sort of goal we have to reach, but have the choice in the future of having maybe a different style.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely talked about. Housing is one of those things where it's kind of core to the UO experience, regardless of whether it's on New Legacy or on production or whatnot. And we do have a number of different 7x7 options that we can explore. Whether it makes it into the next New Legacy publish is kind of up in the air at this point. It depends on how a couple other different projects we're working on shake out, but it's definitely something that we've talked about. But since you did ask about crafting, maybe we got to start looking at how crafters can collectively build something bigger than a house. You got to build it brick by brick. And I think I just heard Steven groan from all the way across the internet. But yeah, it's definitely something we want to provide more aesthetic options for. Although you guys have really made this tower into something special. So I'm totally digging the rooftop bar.
Oh, I appreciate that. So once again, shout out to Zeke here for forcing us to do this, and then big shout out to Elroy for really being our mastermind in terms of interior decorating, and Ivy, of course, too, and John, our guild members who helped set this up. I do want to thank everyone who's currently here on Discord with us. I am seeing your questions come through. We actually do have plans to get to many of them, so you're not seeing me pick it up right away. Don't worry, we will get to them within the confines of this interview. Speaking of, another important question that we actually have received from Discord as well, Crispy, guild systems.
Yeah, so you know, I know the guilds have worked really hard to sort of build up their prestige points, and I think you probably answered this in some of your stuff about the shattering, but you know, so I'm not sure about how, you know, whether things will be preserved. But I was wondering if there is any continuity between seasons in terms of guilds, and you know, I kind of have a little side point about just the I guess the guild house upkeeps, because you know, as the season sort of goes on, you know, the upkeep on the larger and larger houses, you know, we've got some absolute monsters in terms of how many prestige points that they're picking up through doing guild encounters. But like, you know, there's a worry like how sustainable it is for us to keep, you know, building those points, right? Because people sometimes want a bit of downtime, and you know, there's a cycle of having to constantly do that. So I think, yeah, my main question really is about the season 2 continuity of guilds, if any. And another thing is a little bit about maybe this season, the upkeep on the prestige points, or not prestige points, you know, basically, you know, housing upkeep points.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, as far as like the progress, that you would definitely reset. Like that is core to the design of New Legacy, in that there is a hard reset component to it. As far as continuity of like the guild and the names and things like that, that is not baked into the shard, kind of like your surname is, right? We have that tied, and they're unique, right? For the most part. But guilds are a little bit different. So, you know, what that ends up looking like in season 2 remains to be determined at this point. But what I will say about guilds is that we view, I think, collectively, guilds as kind of the glue that holds together player communities, right? It really provides a backdrop for people to make the world their own. If you want to role play a guild of pirates, you can do that. If you want to be orcs, you could do that too. If you want to role play a guild of uh, zombie bitten missionaries that invade Britain every day at 5 o'clock, you could do that too. So anything that we can do to kind of promote and uh, support those guild activities, we definitely want to. And then as far as your other question about kind of the required upkeep and stuff like that, you know, we look at all that in the broader context of how much housing there is available, and how guilds are able to support it. And once we get through the first season and we can kind of drill down and look at what those metrics are, we'll have a better understanding of kind of what kind of tweaks we want to make it. Because we don't want to make it punishing, right? We don't want to make it like it feels like a second job, but we also want to make sure that people stay engaged with what they're doing on the shard, because we don't want it to be a place where people just show up, build their whatever, and then abandon it, because you know, we've seen
Yeah.
that happen too. So striking that balance is tough, but it's something that's high on our list of priorities for kind of looking at season 2 at guilds.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I absolutely get what you're saying about the you know, people just gathering a bunch of stuff and then quitting out, because it's not good for guilds either if people kind of, you know, just come and go so quick, and you have a huge churn all the time. And you know, we got a lot experience of that kind of thing ourselves, right? So I do like the system, but you know, I guess it was just like, what, you know, it's we don't want it to be super easy, but I guess it's just the curve of once you get it, like, you know, maintaining stuff. So yeah, thanks though.
Yeah, and I think what I would say to that, and this is something that I've communicated to my player community as well, is to just enjoy the journey. You know, don't make it a marathon, don't make it a race, don't make it anything that would impinge your enjoyment of the experience of playing on New Legacy. And with that having been said, big shout out to Kindred Order of Loyalty, your guild Crispy, for really being at the forefront as far as guild progress is concerned on the first season. So huge kudos to you folks over there. I think we got Ivy next with a topic that is near and dear to a lot of old school Ultima Online players, PvP.
Yes, PvP. So we have it available in New Legacy, but not too many people are taking advantage of it. We only have a couple of areas that start us off for it. Are there any plans for the future to maybe incentivize open world PvP, maybe tying in crafting to help people who want to be a PvPer? Maybe they get special gear, anything like that on your radar?
Yeah, so as far as PvP is concerned, right? We had some pretty big goals with PvP on New Legacy. We were looking at some big systems that were going to be a part of it. Not all of them made it in for sure. We kind of had to scale it back there and focus on what we could adequately deliver, within our launch window and all that. So we certainly want to support it, and we want people to feel like they can PvP and UO in such a way that works best for them. Having worked on several PvP events in the past, and then a couple different systems over the years on production, it's always a very challenging thing to kind of get a pulse of what people want in terms of their PvP experience. Because what I find is that everybody always wants what's best for them, right? It's PvP, right? You're always going to go for the path that is going to be the thing that makes you the best. So trying to check all those boxes and kind of connect that into a cohesive system can be a challenge. But we definitely know that there is room in season 2, definitely, for us to look at PvP and see how we can make some changes to make it a little bit more in line with what folks are asking us for.
Parallax, I'm curious as to whether you have some thoughts about the kind of carrots that can be put forward for players on the next season of New Legacy to incentivize engaging a little bit more with the PvP systems. You have Dungeon Outposts, obviously. We do have champion spawns on New Legacy, but it doesn't seem like there's just the reward out there to motivate players to sort of take the time to really explore PvP through what we currently have. Vice Virtue 2 for that matter.
Yeah, one of the systems that we just haven't had a chance to delve into yet is a reward vendor for PvP activity. And that would be something similar to the legendary foe point vendor, where there's unique items that could be acquired with PvP currency, which you would acquire either through VVV battles, doing champion spawns, or just earning some kind of PvP currency in general. We also have room to expand out into more champion spawns. As I'm sure you guys are aware, if you play production, there are several champion spawns that are not in New Legacy right now. But there's definitely room to expand there, and the carrot would definitely be the currency in a vendor that's unique to PvP. But as Greg said, we did have to scale back some of the PvP implementations with New Legacy, but it's definitely on our radar to get some more PvP goodies out there.
Very exciting to hear. And sort of along that line of questioning, this is something that you were really passionate about, Greg, which was introducing a thieving system for New Legacy. You talked about one of the earlier depth streams for New Legacy. I'm kind of wondering where that might be for the second season for the team.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with thieving in general is that it's a ton of fun for the thief, and that's pretty much where it stops, right? So whoever the victim isn't having a great time. The most fun that I ever had playing UO was way back in the days on production, when there were some live events in Trinsic, and there was this lich who was invading. His name was Junar, and basically they turned the guard zone off in Trinsic, and I was running around stealing everybody's silver weapons, and it was a blast, right? For me, and for everybody else, not so much. So when we look at what thieving might look like in the future, I've got some ideas that try to thread that needle of making the thieving between players feel like thievery for the thief, but also not feel like outright robbery for the victim. Um, whether that's the ability for the victim to reclaim the stolen object through some type of fencing system, where the victim might be able to hunt the thief down and attack them, similar to kind of how we had like permagray thieves back in the day. There's a lot of ideas, bounties, things like that. There's a lot of ideas that are kind of bubbling around. It's just a matter of, finding something that is cohesive enough for us to implement, and then the juice being worth the squeeze. Everything that we do has to be evaluated like, is it something that is going to be worth it in the long run, right? For what we're doing. If it's something that's pretty easy to implement, sure, no problem. But when we start dumping a ton of dev time into these big systems, and then it's not exactly what players want because we can't deliver that for, balancing reasons or exploit concerns or whatever, it really is something we have to be careful with. And thieving, unfortunately, falls into that category. Even though it is kind of my personal pet favorite, I think broadly speaking, it tends to trend towards the bottom of the list. So we'll see.
No, I totally understand that. You do have to pick and choose your battles, and you're absolutely right. You got to prioritize what will be most engaging for the broadest number of players. And it does seem that thieving, while fun, probably sort of occupies a niche. I will say that in terms of like, UO content creation, it's nothing but thieving for some reason. I don't know why. um, yeah, thank you for that answer, Kyronix. I like going back and forth between Kyronix and Greg. We're going to jump over to Zeke for another very important question about what we can hope for in the next several months for the season.
Yeah, well, continuing to talk about the thieving part, looking at adding like snooping and stealing and skills of that nature. I mean, back in the day, you talked about stealing people's stuff. I was a faction sigil thief. So I used to like to sneak around other spaces and steal the sigils when they came up and then try to get back to my base with them and things of that nature. So while stealing was involved, not too much snooping, but and then hanging out as a thief during the champ spawns and then stealing scrolls from the unwary participants and getting like a 120 tactic scroll and then being chased all over the dungeon while I tried to escape. But
Yeah. So, I mean, like, we've talked about like, I think we had a little back and forth on the forums at some point, but, some kind of warning when you enter an area, thieves work in this area. So be careful, but there also being some kind of big old carrot for people to go down there and want to explore. Like, there's a lot we can experiment with, but we just got to be particular with it. So
Right.
We'll see.
All right, Zeke, you got next.
What?
You got?
We just talked about.
No, I know. This is more about the events that we can hopefully look forward to. Community.
Oh, it has your name next to it, but that's okay. You skipped over yourself, but that's all right. Seasonal climate-based systems. Lost me. That's right. Community events. We could talk about that. So like currently on production, you have EMs on each of the shards that do several. I'll say several events each month. And they are widely participated. I mean, you've got a whole group of shard transfer people that go from from one shard to the other to attend these events. Do you plan on having something similar to that on NL, either next, part of this season or into the next season?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever have like EMs in the context that they exist on production on New Legacy. They're definitely different experiences, and we don't want to kind of blur the lines between the two. And I think this question kind of comes from some confusion that cropped up at one point. Somebody asked us about EM events on New Legacy, and our answer at that time was basically that the devs will essentially be the EMs, and while that's not the case at all, like we're not going to go and be EMs. I didn't mean it that way, but more so in that the live events that you have come to expect on production, we will do on New Legacy as well. And in that context, some of the things and mechanics that you see in EM events, like big boss fights and limited time stuff where, it's got to be now or never. The castle is getting besieged by a vile evil from far across the starry sea, and it's now or never, or else the realm is going to be destroyed. Like that kind of stuff, we definitely want to do. I think that's kind of core to what the UO experience has been over the years. Like we try to create things that people can experience on their own time because we know people have things that get in the way of playing UO, like pesky things like jobs and family responsibilities and things like that. But we do want to still kind of harken back to those old days when you had to be there then and now. It's kind of like when people used to watch television at a given time, like when Seinfeld was on Thursday nights, right?
Exactly.
Now everything's on demand.
And I think NL would be a little bit harder to do because, I mean, with the production shards, there's a specific time zone that they're in. So that makes it a lot easier where with a NL, it could be anybody or anywhere around the world. So yeah, I can understand that.
Thank you very much, Zeke, and thank you for that answer, Greg. Excited to hear we're going to get some fun events unique to New Legacy in the months ahead. Next.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Ivy.
So I ran across, and a couple of these other guys ran across with me in New Legacy, a giant turkey. Was that a special event or New Legacy? Was that accidental?
They're on production. If you kill so many turkeys, you can spawn one.
Oh, okay. I'd never seen that before. It scared me to death.
Oh, they're fun. Yeah, you get the wild eagles come in and birds attacking you, the red ones.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, that's
literally. I screamed in real life.
and we actually do that on Legends every now and then. We'll especially around Thanksgiving, we will have a turkey hunt, and we go out as a group. We just split up and kill as many turkeys as we can to spawn one of those. The fun time was we spawned 2 at the same time, provoked them. It was wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is exactly why I wanted to have this diverse group of players, because this is such an immense, deep game that, little things like that can be fresh for a player who has obviously been part of the game for a long time. That's one of the cool things about Ultima Online. It's a really deep game with a lot to discover over the course of your time as a player. That having been said, we need to push along here. We're getting close to the last dregs of the interview. And I'd like to go back to you, Ivy, with a question about the season finale.
Yeah, sure. So can you give us any hard cutoff date for this first season? I know that we said it was going to be an October time frame. And also, when can we expect to see season 2 start back up?
Yeah, as far as like a hard date, like it's going to be this particular date and time, we're not prepared to announce that yet. There will be ample time for you to prepare for that. It's not like we're going to say, all right, guys, it's Friday. On Monday, the shattering is going to happen. No, it's nothing like that. We've got a number of different projects in the works that we have to just kind of keep in mind while we prepare out for the later part of this year. So we will announce it when it's time, but you'll have plenty of leeway up to it. And then as far as season 2, we had originally envisioned New Legacy seasons being roughly 1 year long, and I don't see us deviating from that at this time. So should be roughly the same time of year each year.
Got you. Thank you, Greg. We have a question from Garrett here on Discord asking, will you plan to run a beta for season 2 before it's formally launched?
There will be some kind of testing period for it because there will certainly be changes. We definitely have, it's a unique situation with New Legacy. You guys have probably noticed as we've done published, it's deviated from our traditional testing plan where on production we have test center and then we go to Origin Izumo Baja and then it goes to production because we have that available to us. With New Legacy, we kind of enter into this like shadow realm where it's like, we're going to put some new stuff on here. Reverts may happen. We don't think they will, but just be advised so that people can have an opportunity to test the new stuff kind of in the live environment. It's a little unique for us to do that, but it's just the limitations of how the shards are set up. So, there will be a testing phase for season 2 in some degree. It'll probably be semi-similar to how we've done things on New Legacy currently when it comes to testing.
Thank you very much, Greg, for that answer.
And when you're sending out invites to test, remember Zeke.
Or Jack Sparrow, either or. He's under both aliases. I got a question here for you, Parallax and Greg. We're all here to champion what you as a team are trying to achieve with this game as a service. We love Ultima Online. All of us here, all of us on Discord, and elsewhere in this vast community. What can we do to help you folks? We have developers, we have gamers, role players, Dungeons and Dragons enthusiasts, and streamers. How can we get more involved in supporting Ultima Online and making it this great MMORPG that it is?
Just keep doing what you're doing. I really mean that. We are so fortunate to have an amazing community behind UO. One of the most endearing stories of UO's history that I always like to tell is if you go to any game development conference and you ask a room of game devs, not just PC game devs. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's mobile or PC or console or whatever. How many of you have played UO? And how many of you have worked on UO? This game has been so enduring and the cornerstone of so many people's careers and so many people's lives that really the game is more than just pixels and terrain tiles and pets and character transfers and all the other things that go into the experience. It's really about the people. And by you guys doing what you're doing in terms of these podcasts and talking about Ultima Online and being passionate about it, just keep doing that because that's how we keep this game relevant after nearly 30 years. It is earned its place in, I think, the history books because of its enduring longevity. And like I said, that's because of you guys. So just keep it up.
Appreciate that. And let me just say that, there's a vast appreciation of part of the player community for, veterans like yourself, Greg. And of course, new young guns like Parallax here who are leaving their stamp. It's great.
Yeah. Nick, how long have you been playing? It's something like 15 years, but I still call him a noob.
Yeah, about 2007, so noob in UO terms, yeah. Just to, if I could just kind of piggyback off what Greg said there, we definitely listen to all your guys' feedback, whether, we can obviously take action on the item and, implement how you your destiny, that's always up in the air, but, I listen to all feedback that I see that comes through in the forums or other community manager channels and stuff like that. Keep sending your feedback. It's heard, it's listened to. We may not always be able to do something with it, but it can give us ideas and something similar to what you're looking for. But yeah, feedback is great. You are heard. We do listen to it.
Thank you so much, Parallax, for adding that in. Ivy, are you around? Let me know if you're at your mic.
Yeah, I'm here.
Would you mind taking the next question for us about looking ahead?
Right. Well, if I could find it here. I think I went off of it.
No problem. I'll give you a...
The big picture, what are you most excited about for the next season?
Martians. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, hey, don't tease me with aliens now.
Nick, what are you most excited about for next season?
Just to kind of see how players progress from season 1. Will they do the same thing that they did in season 1? Will they change it up? How will they engage with the world? Obviously, the new content that we're putting into season 2, how you interact with that, and that type of stuff. I really like watching players do the content that I put in the game. That may sound kind of creepy, but I enjoy watching players do the content and just having fun. My ultimate goal, as I think I've mentioned before, is I want players to have fun. I want them to have a good experience, whether it's through narratives, encounters, events, so that's what I'm looking forward to in season 2, just how players are going to interact with the content that's out there for them.
And how about yourself, Greg?
I definitely want to see how the legacy system progresses into season 2 and what kind of interesting things players will do with their continued family name. Like I said, that was one of the kind of core continuity aspects of a shard that is otherwise non-permanent. So I'm really interested to see what that turns into in season 2. Also, what I'm excited for is what the team can put together for season 2. We are, like I said, so fortunate to have a dev team that is some of the most passionate UO nerds on the planet, right? Everybody who is on this team is great at what they do. It is incredibly rare that you will find folks working on a game together for as long as we all have. And with that, it affords us the ability to do things that I think others wouldn't be able to do. We've got tremendously talented artists who are really, really good at providing absolute nightmare fuel. You guys got a little taste of that in the last production event with, I call them the scary meatballs, but the the beholders and Jim, our monster artist. He is so talented when it comes to anything that has to do with the I call it the shadow realm of despair. And we're supported by a great team of engineers. Stephen is what keeps us going every day. Michael Misk, our QA person, is what makes sure that what we're doing isn't absolutely broken all the time. One of his favorite sayings is "It's broke, yo," and our usual response is, "Well, it works fine on my shard," and we work through that. We've got a great community manager, Artemis Fenico. She does a tremendous job keeping us up to date with what's going on all the forums. Because, like Nick said, we do get all the feedback. We do respond to all the feedback as best we can, but it comes from everywhere. So she's really done a great job of kind of filtering and trying to get players answers to their questions so that we can focus on other stuff that we're having to focus on a day-to-day. We've got a great company at Broadsword that supports UO wholeheartedly. And of course, at least from a personal perspective, none of this would have been possible without Bonnie, aka Masane. We talked briefly in the beginning about how recently she's taken on a role as she enjoys more time to herself, and she's absolutely earned that. You look at somebody with a career like that who has been on a single game for nearly 3 decades. That does not happen in the game industry. So she plucked me from obscurity years ago to be an EM. Here we are today. So she's still going strong with the EM program. They do an outstanding job keeping events going. So, all of these things together are what make us successful, and we fully expect that to be the case for years to come.
Yes, that's very well said. And once again, thanks to Bonnie. And of course, a big shout out to all the event moderators across the production shards that, do such a great job of ensuring that month to month, there's always something to look forward to for veterans and new players alike. We do have a question here from Garrett for you, Greg, saying, regarding family names, this kind of touches upon your interest in where the legacy goes for players in future seasons. You were talking about unique rewards that will reflect the success of your family name early in the development of New Legacy. Is this something that's still relevant, and what type of rewards could players look forward to?
Yeah, so I think, originally in my head, at least, what happens in your head versus what actually gets implemented and finalized are oftentimes two completely different things. But the way that I see that kind of progressing is in the context of all of the legacy awards, particularly like the medals. One of our former artists, Tori, you guys remember from some of the earlier streams that we did about New Legacy, she drew up all of the character portraits, and then Jim did the medals for us so that we could kind of create you a persona in game that you weren't able to do before, right? So you can kind of customize how your character's portrait looks, and then we can award you these medals. And that's kind of how I see that progressing. We got some other ideas we're kicking around with how we can best display that. I'm always looking at new ways that we can leverage our art to be more visual with our storytelling. We are limited because it's a 2D space, but things like dump art that can display more details. I kind of liken it to when you come across like your grandparents' old collection of medals from a war that happened in the past. Or recently, I was doing some genealogy research and found some stuff from ancestors that I didn't know I had. That's the kind of real world comparison that I make to what we're trying to simulate in New Legacy from season to season with your uh, legacy and your surname. So that's kind of the inspiration for it, and that's where I would kind of expect things to go from here.
That's a great answer. And just for the record, Greg and Parallax, from my own little, poll of one here, I really enjoy the Legacy Sash component and the medals and also the player journal. I think these are great ways of expressing a player's achievements on the new Legacy Shard. And if you find a way of building upon that system in future seasons, I know as a player would be well satisfied, being able to look at that sash and think back to, previous years of my journey on the Legacy Shard. We are at the bottom of our interview here. I want to thank Kyronix, Greg, and Parallax Nick here for their patience and their answers, and just for their welcome presence here, and sharing with us information about the new Legacy Shard and their plans for it. We do have one final question, and the pirate captain himself has the honor of asking it.
Actually, you kind of answered it several times during the course of the this meeting, but what continues to motivate you after working on a project like this for the last 20 years or so?
Nick, you go first on that one.
Yeah. Honestly, the player experience. As I mentioned before, I love watching players consume the content I create, making entertaining content, making enjoyable content. That's what keeps me designing, knowing that players will hopefully enjoy the event I put out or the content I put out. It's always about just, the players that keeps me going and designing the game, because if I'm designing it and no one's playing it, then what's the point? So the players are the core to UO.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would literally parrot what Nick said. I spent a lot of time, as you guys know, as a designer. And one of the most rewarding things is when you build something and then you watch people get to experience it. And, sometimes they tear you to shreds over it, and you go home that day beaten and bruised, but you emerge the next day stronger and better and keep putting stories into the world that people are excited to experience. As I look to my role now as producer, I take it incredibly seriously because, as I said, UO is more than just pixels. So I view this as an awesome responsibility to be steward of this world for generations to come. And I will do everything that I can to preserve that so that we will continue to cement our position in the annals of gaming history.
And, I would say that it's not only a question of preserving it, but breaking new ground. And I think that's what's so exciting about the new Legacy Shard. The reason why I came to Ultima Online as a player 4 years ago and then returned, last year, and why I think thousands of others will eventually find their way to your game. So now that you have the sandbox as a team, I want to wish you all well on your creative journey. And as long as, you guys push that envelope and create that new experience here on the new Legacy, this will be a success for Ultima Online and your player community. So thank you both, and indeed the entire team that you just referenced earlier, Kyronix, for all the hard work that they put into Ultima Online. Before we leave the conversation, I want to give an opportunity for my co-hosts for any last words, any last questions, starting with Crispy here, if you're back.
Yeah, I'm sort of in and out a little bit. Sorry, but no, it's been really great to talk to you, and thanks again for coming and talking to us. It's been great.
Appreciate you, Crispy. Poison Ivy.
Yeah, I just want to say that you guys are just so invaluable to us. You enrich our lives. A lot of us have been here a long time. We're pulling in kids, grandkids, and what have you. It's great to have somewhere we can call home, and we definitely support you. And I hate that you have bad days and times, but just know that the majority of us love you for everything you do.
Well said, Ivy. Zeke.
Yeah, I say the same thing. I mean, like I said, I've been playing this game for over 20 years now, and I left once for like a year and a half, but I've been back for the last 15 again. So there's something about the game that just keeps us coming back for more. It's an addiction, so to speak. And speaking of addictions, I really would love a pin of wisdom in the store on NL.
Found a way to leverage that into the conversation.
I had to throw it in there, you know? It's like, y'all make a lot of money if you put that out there in the store.
I want to thank everyone here on Discord. For those of you who are listening to this podcast as a video on demand, we did have a Discord audience here at the Wyvern's Lair, and I want to thank everyone who came on by. Violet, Some Dude, Slurms Mackenzie, Plofted, Nathan, Merlin, Dragon, Moffitts, John, Garrett, and Flying Cobra. Thank you all for joining us and being part of this conversation. Violet, I know you were a guest of our guild tower. I do have one little, request of anyone who visits us here at the Wyvern's Lair. If you do visit our guild tower, South Intrinsic, and this applies to Kyronix and Parallax as well, it would be a great honor if you all, including Plofted here, were to sign our little bulletin board on the second floor of our guild tower as visitors. So yeah, if you guys could remember to do that on your way out of this conversation. This has been Dungeon Master Wyvern. We've been talking to the producer of Ultima Online, Kyronix here, along with a senior content designer, young gun there, Parallax, along with my co-hosts, Poison Ivy, Zeke, and Crispy. And I look forward to seeing you all back here again soon for more adventures.